Hey everybody, Allison Morrow here with your SciComm hack. Before we get started, don't forget, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell icon so you get notifications whenever I upload a new video, and give this video a thumbs up if you like this kind of content so I know to keep it coming. Alright, so today's topic, headlines. How do you balance that need for a compelling, engaging headline that people want to click on and read without being too sensational and lose your credibility as a scientist? It's a concern that Emily Grayson has had in the past. She is the program director with the Washington Sea Grant Crab team, and here's what she has to say.
So one of the questions I have is, what are the strategies for working with reporters on how to make a headline that is attractive to readers, but also not hyperbolic, doesn't overstate the case and raise too much alarm?
Okay, so specifically the concern is they're trying to get people to read and you're thinking, oh God, you just gave me this sensational reputation as a scientist.
Yeah, so oftentimes I'll have really great conversations with reporters and I feel like they've gotten all of the nuance that I've tried to put into the issue, but then when the article comes out or whatever, a headline will be maybe overstating the case in a way that makes me a little uncomfortable, in a way that I wasn't trying to communicate.
Alright, so if you're a scientist or a science journalist, you feel Emily's pain. So I have a few hacks today to help you get through this. The first is the most important one, and I'm calling it Speak Up. It's a lesson that I learned the hard way myself. I was working with a scientist once, and I actually read my planned headline to this scientist, and that person said, yeah, that basically works. But I found out later that actually he was pretty uncomfortable with that headline and just felt too uncomfortable about making me upset or pushing me as a journalist to tell me that I was wrong. But you know what? In the end, it wasn't good for either one of us, because the following day, other outlets picked up my story along with basically the same headline, and this scientist had to issue a correction. It was embarrassing for me, it was embarrassing for that scientist, and it all could have been avoided if he had just said, no, that's inaccurate. Let's talk about why you're missing things here. Number two, remember, the headline is just a reflection of how the journalist understands the entire story. Sure, there may be people who are just sort of bent towards grandiose words or sensationalism, but for the most part, journalists just want to get it right. But if they don't understand the science, the headline is going to reflect that. So how can you make sure that the journalist you're working with gets it? Well, one idea is to become the student. So be the person who is asking the journalist to reflect back to you what they learned. In other words, they always say, if you can teach material, that's when you finally know you really understand it. So before the journalist leaves, why not just say, hey, can you tell me what your understanding of the topic is? Because that's a great way to flush out whether this person really gets it. Number three, are there words that come with certain nuances or even baggage in the scientific community that the journalist or the public just isn't going to know? Then communicate those words and the nuances, because otherwise the journalist may use them without realizing they're getting stuck in the mud. And if you see the headline later and you see a word that makes you uncomfortable, it's okay to call the journalist and explain why. They may not change the headline, but they may change it. That kind of stuff happens all the time because journalists really just want to get it right. And finally, you have to untangle yourself from all of that peer pressure. I know this might be kind of an unpopular hack, but I have to say it because scientists tell me on a regular basis that peer pressure is rampant inside and outside of academia. And sometimes they're afraid to engage with the public at all because they don't know what their peers are going to think. So here's the problem. If you're only talking to your scientist peers or in a way that they only can understand, you're leaving a good majority of the world in the dark. What is more important, that the public understands what's going on and thereby can even make changes and good choices based on what your research says, or that a small group of your peers gets it and is pleased? Is there a happy medium there? Let me tell you about a scientist that I interviewed once. She talked about the whales she was studying as the jazz musicians of their particular area. She said actually it was kind of risky to call them jazz musicians because, well, would people say she was anthropomorphizing the animal? To to me, I was shocked that that would be something she would even consider, because I just don't understand why that would be a big deal. But for her, it was kind of like going out on a limb. The thing is, that took her headline around the world, and people started to really think and engage and share the story about these whales. Isn't that what we want? Engaging the public, after all? So remember, if you're only talking in a way that the folks inside the laboratory understand, then you're leaving out everybody else outside the laboratory. Again, I'm Allison Morrow. This is your SciComm hack. Subscribe to the channel. See you next time.